I don't know if you've seen Love Simon, read the books, but I obviously you've seen a little bit of Love Victor. You're in it. But what does it mean to
No,
you to just
any
be?
of it actually. I'm just
Say it
kidding.
again.
I was like, "No, I didn't actually see any of it." No, I'm kidding. Of course I have.
What does it mean to you to be a part of the Love Simon verse?
I think it's really, really special. I remember watching the movie, in Atlanta actually, and
Oh, wow.
thinking, like, how crazy it is that we haven't started telling these stories sooner, and how important it is and continues to be. And so, like, getting the chance to be a part of the series is like so special, and so I'm like so honored to be able to tell this story and to help people, because that's really all I want to do, like, as an artist, is to do work that means something to people and helps people.
Mm. And I think the cool thing about Love Simon that it's done over and over again at this point is showing many different experiences of like coming out of the community of queerness. And I thought it was really beautiful to see Rahim's journey with his Muslim family included in the story as well, and how their son kind of navigated that dynamic. I wondered if you could talk about that, especially as like I believe you're Iranian as well, correct?
Yeah, yeah. Um, Talking to my dad about it, he told me that, like, in the Muslim community, that, yeah, being queer is like forbidden. It's not. Not only is it not talked about, it's like you could be persecuted for it. And so, like, to have that idea of it just being such a taboo, and have it like being illegal in a lot of countries that these people are in, like, but being queer is so, it's valid, and it's like these people aren't validated every day of their lives. So to be able to play a character that is able to do that, I feel like hopefully will give those people hope that they can be who they are.
Hmm. I like that. And I thought it was really interesting when you talk about there's this moment, I believe it's in the photo lab when you and Victor are talking about kind of like Benji and his drama and about whiteness and the differences and experiences between like just being coming out as like when you're in America, when you're white and versus like people of color and when you have a family from immigrants. And there's one thing I wrote down. Let me see. It was, you said, how can you love your parents when you hate a lot of what they believe in, but you do because you know how much they sacrifice for you? Um, I thought that was a really cool point to make and something that I haven't really seen in kind of a show like this before. I wondered if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I find it really interesting. The show is telling stories about people of color coming out, whereas that's not really something we've seen often. Even with Love Simon, it was about a white boy coming out. It was relatively easy in the grand scheme of things. He had the support and love from his parents, but it's not always like that, and especially with people of color, because the cultures that they come from, just doesn't allow for that. You know, um, so to be able to, like, talk about that on a show, I think is really cool and groundbreaking, because, like, again, there isn't anything on TV like it. I have yet to see another um, queer Muslim character on anywhere to talk about that. So to be able to be like one of the first is like so special. And I'm just so honored to be trusted with this story. But yeah, going back to that, like, with Victor, for example, like, he had the issue of his Puerto Rican family not understanding or being so comfortable with it, because he comes from a Catholic background. And, like, with Rahim, he comes from a Muslim background. And, like, I really enjoy that with these stories, we're not just telling one person's perspective of this, we're telling multiple perspectives of this. And again, I just think that's what I'm here to do, is like to help people. And I think it's really cool that that's what Love Victor is doing.
Yeah. And yeah, it's exactly, I think, the conversation that needs to be had around the show. Because I remember when Love Simon came out as well, and there were critiques of it, kind of like the ease of his coming out. And obviously, it was like I think it hit for all LGBTQ people, because we all kind of have to go through those experiences. But I think that it is a very you know, white upper middle class kind of story. And I think that's so cool that we're seeing variations of that in the spinoff. And yeah, and how Rahim especially is kind of like combating all the critiques. I think in my head, at least, he's kind of fighting some of the critiques that a lot of people had about Love, Simon, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Um, and so another thing, I was kind of shook talking about, so there was a moment where you and Victor are skipping school and you go on like the grinder date shows up at the coffee shop.
Mhm.
And I don't know if it's technically a grinder date. Are you allowed to say grinder on? I don't know, but
Scripted as Grinder and on
yeah,
but then like I don't think they got like the clearance for it, so I had to say like, oh, from one of those apps, you know, which
we know which app.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um,
It's Grinder, but whatever, we'll see.
yeah. But I thought it was really interesting talking about like kind of like the femmephobia that happens when the grinder date shows up. And even it hits on like, it's hitting on a lot of interesting things because you kind of mentioned you know, people just kind of think of me as like the funny like beanpole or something, you say like that. And it kind of hits on like the GBF character, kind of like the desexualization of, you know, like the funny gay best friend. And I just thought it was really interesting that a lot of conversations were happening at once in that one moment, and it was able to happen in a really funny way. So I was wondering if you could talk about that scene. Sorry, I'm kind of ranting.
Of course. Yeah, I thought it was really cool to shoot that scene too, because I know that's a common excuse me, experience that people have in the LGBTQ plus community. It happens every day. And like I was talking to my scene partner, Nicholas Hamilton, who was playing the guy that I was meeting at the coffee shop. Super cool guy, and he's been out for a long time. And he was telling me like, yeah, this is very, very common. Like, and I just couldn't believe that like there aren't other like scenes anywhere else that talk about this that have like made fun of it or whatever. Like this is like the first time I've really heard of it. And so getting to play that and talking to him about it and talking to our writer Brian Tannen about it, because he wrote the episode, I asked if it had like stemmed from personal experience, and he was like, oh yeah, like I literally wrote this like pretty much verbatim of an experience that I had. And I was like, okay, wow, okay, all right. So I talked to both of them, and then I figured out like how would it feel to just be blatantly rejected because of how you look or how you talk, by someone that you thought you liked, by someone you thought you could trust. And so I feel like after talking to them, like I had a good enough understanding of that experience and the feeling that comes with it, to be able to play it. I thought it was really interesting.
It definitely is. And I think the cool thing about it, what Victor was able to do was, so there's like kind of this like budding romance that happens between y'all, which I was like freaking out. Um, and it, I thought it was really cool that Victor was very like, well, one, just like forget that guy, like whatever. But two, um, kind of interested because, you know, okay, so on that same token, kind of like the femme characters, quote unquote femme, don't often get to be a love interest in stories. They're kind of like the sideline character, which I think is what that beanpole comment was about. So I thought it was really cool kind of watching this love triangle play out between Rahim and Victor and Benji. And I realized that, hold on, how do I, because I'm just seeing a blank screen right now.
Oh, for
No,
me,
no, from, okay, there it goes. I'm trying to figure out how to, there it goes. Okay, that was weird. Sorry. Yeah, okay, I'll start that question over. So, I was watching the love triangle play out between Rahim and Victor and Benji, and I realized that I have never seen two gay people of color kind of like simp over each other in that way, like kind of like fall into that like, you know, crushing stage. And I realized that that's like a huge deal that I've watched a lot. It's literally my job to watch these kinds of things. And I've never seen kind of like an interracial couple consisting of two people of color play out like this. And I wondered if that crossed your mind or if that was something that you thought about or like just what that might mean to you.
Yeah, of course it crossed my mind. I'm so used to seeing like the love interest, especially like an LGBTQ plus love interest, being a white person. I think it's for whatever reason, like it helps the viewer, or maybe the studios think it helps the viewer feel more comfortable with the idea of this person being gay because they're white. Um, Whatever that is, I love that Love Victor is pushing those boundaries and figuring out like that it doesn't have to be like that. I mean, of course, Benji is white, but I mean, I think it's really cool that I get to be a person of color who's also a love interest for another person of color, instead of it being just like an interracial couple, like a white and a little spice added to it. But yeah, like of course I thought about it and I thought it was really cool. And I think it comes from like one of our writers, Marcos Luvanos, being, you know, a Latinx person of color who's also queer. And I think that's so important to get those kinds of people in the writing room, in the writer's room, because like the last thing I want is to be telling a story about people of color written by white people.
Mhm.
And so that, I think that's why Love Victor is really special. And that I get to tell that story and to kind of show people that, you know, not, you don't have to just be white to be loved, you know?
Yeah, and I think exactly what you said, that it really shines through that the people writing the stories as well are people of color, and they're sharing like some of their own experiences and how, yeah, like because it is interesting how like it is like this idea of marketability and relatability to the audience to always have like a white like when it's an interracial couple, there's always one partner that's white, and that's like fine. That's like there's a lot of those couples in real life. But I mean, my partner is Asian, and it was just interesting seeing the dynamic. It's a little bit different when it's two people of color, and so I felt very seen by that and excited, which is it doesn't happen very often. So yeah, I thought that was really cool, and I think a lot of people are gonna resonate.
Yeah,
Yes.
so too. Especially like just, I mean, most of my friends are people of color. And so like for them too, they're saying like how cool it is that Love Victor's so diverse and that I get to be like part of it, you know? And so I completely agree with you that like there should be more of those kinds of stories. And I'm just grateful that I'm one of them, you know?
And there's a moment when Rahim thanks Victor for sharing his story and quote unquote helping him be brave. And it's kind of funny because that's exactly what this, like your character in this show is doing for so many LGBTQ folks who are like still figuring out their sexuality, especially because it's like geared towards a younger audience. I wondered if you had any thoughts about like that impact or maybe even like words of advice or anything you wanted to say.
In what terms? Sorry, I don't think I understand the question.
Just for like young viewers that are watching that the show might be helping them be brave.
Oh, of course. I feel like I hope that the viewer, whoever it is, the one thing that they can take away from watching the show is that if you surround yourself with the right people, it doesn't have to necessarily be family, but people you choose to be family. Then I feel like you could be strong enough or brave enough, or whatever it is, if you have the right people around you to be your true self. And I think that's what Love Victor is like gathering the troops and figuring out who you can be comfortable around, enough so that you can be comfortable with yourself.
Mhm.
And I just hope that that's what people take away from the show, because I feel like that's exactly what Rahim is to Victor, and Victor is to Rahim, and Pilar is to Rahim, and Felix is to Victor, and I can keep going on this, but I feel like that's what I want them to take away from it.
Yeah, a chosen family.
Yeah.
That cliffhanger at the end, I'm like hoping and praying that it's your door that Victor's standing at. I know you probably don't even know, but I'm fingers are crossed.
Fingers across, you know, you never know. But at the end of the day, I just hope that whoever's door, Victor ends up at, it's the right one for him,
Yeah.
and it's the right decision that's going to make Victor happy.
Mhm.
Because I feel like Victor's been really confused for the past 2 seasons. So I would love to see him finally figure out what he truly wants. And if that means being with Rahim, then awesome.
That's a very sweet way to put it. But I'm rooting for Rahim. And last thing. um, oh, also, I was going to say, I thought it was really cool that you're on Generation, which is another really awesome queer show. You are, I think you're like in the aquarium, right? Like when
Yes.
and Riley has that little moment. But that's just another really awesome show, and you're doing really cool work, and I just wanted to recognize that.
Thank you so much. You have no idea how much that means.